Deanna, let's say you're a doctor and you have a 28-year-old patient who has a history of scleroderma, interstitial lung disease, and WHO group 1 pulmonary arterial hypertension. Now, she was advised not to get pregnant because pregnancy is contraindicated with her chronic medical conditions. However, her birth control and contraceptive methods failed, and she presents to your clinic at 9 weeks gestation. And because she lives in a restrictive abortion law state, she can't get an abortion. At the time of your exam, she's hemodynamically stable. You have to adjust a lot of her medications because unfortunately a lot of them are teratogenic and contraindicated in pregnancy. And you send her home with follow-up with maternal fetal medicine, cardiology, and pulmonology. 2 weeks later, she presents to your clinic with worsening lower extremity edema. Her vitals are still stable, so you adjust her diuretics and send her home. 2 more weeks go by, and now she presents to your clinic with worsening lower extremity edema still. However, now she's having progressive dyspnea on exertion and decreased exercise tolerance. She looks like she's having trouble breathing, and on vitals check, her O2 sat is 90% on room air, and she's tachycardic to 102. You send her to the emergency room for IV diuresis. In the emergency room, her O2 sat is now 88%. They put her on 6 liters nasal cannula and give her IV diuretics, which helps, and she feels better. Her vital signs stabilize. But because of her tenuous clinical situation, they admit her to the cardiology service. While on the cardiology service, she has labs which show that she's having worsening renal function. Her creatinine is 1.5 from a baseline of 0.5. She also has a mild transaminitis, an elevated troponin and proBNP. Bedside echo shows a dilated right ventricle, flattened intraventricular septum, and elevated pulmonary arterial systolic pressure. Her diuretic regimen is increased. Despite going up on her diuretic, she's getting progressively more volume overloaded and hypoxic, so she is escalated to high flow nasal cannula. However, her blood pressure starts to drop, and now she's developing a lactic acidosis and going into worsening renal failure. Her care is escalated to the intensive care unit. A central line is placed so she could be started on inotropes to help assist with her diuresis. While in the ICU, her labs continue to deteriorate. Now she is in oliguric renal failure and diuresis is no longer working. So she has another line placed and is started on CVVH to help with her fluid overload. And despite this, and going up on her inotropes, her blood pressure continues to drop and she's becoming progressively more altered and having a worsening lactic acidosis. At 18 weeks and 3 days gestation, fetal heart tone stop and she suffers intrauterine fetal demise. The doctors and the interdisciplinary team decide to perform a termination of pregnancy at this time to help stabilize her medical condition, but her oxygen saturation begins to plummet and she is emergently intubated. During intubation, she begins to brady down and become progressively more hypotensive. A bedside echocardiogram shows that she has full-blown RV failure and her RV has blown. She codes shortly thereafter, and despite aggressive resuscitative measures, the patient dies. So Deanna, at what point during this clinical course would you, in your opinion, say that the patient was sick enough to perform an abortion? At what point would you say, yes, this is the moment that her life is at risk, that I feel comfortable that I'm going to have enough time to intervene to save her life, but also be justified within the bounds of the law to not have my medical license revoked, to not be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars, or go to jail for decades? At what point would you, in your medical opinion, say that that abortion is medically justified? I very much look forward to your response.